Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Entrepreneur Mind Speak. I'm Lauren with Creme to Mint, a branding and packaging design agency, and I'm here with my co host, Natalie.
Hello, I'm Natalie from Cloud Create Web Development based in Tampa.
And today on our podcast, we have Jeffrey Barton. He is revisiting us from last year, and so much has changed since last year, especially in skincare, between like new legislation, shifting tariffs, evolving consumer expectations, just so much. And so we're really excited to hear what you're noticing and what we can expect for the future.
Appreciate you guys having me back. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. So let's dive in. What are the top 2 to 3 changes that have had the biggest ripple effects in skincare?
One of the biggest things that we've seen in the last year is that mass market beauty has now outpaced prestige beauty, that very, very top end of the market. So, for the first time in 10 years, that's the case. So, some of this may be due to inflation, economic uncertainties, maybe a little bit with tariffs, but it kind of indicates that maybe there's a little bit of pullback in skincare. Skincare has been on a majestic rise for the past 5 years. And finally, it's starting to kind of come down a little bit. It's not in worrying territory yet, but folks have pulled back a little bit. And that move from prestige to mass market beauty is a little bit of an indication that consumers are looking for a little bit more value out there.
That makes perfect sense. And it's interesting you say the last 5 years because I remember in 2020 during COVID, that's when I felt like skincare really became at the forefront. You know, makeup kind of took a back seat for a little bit, and then things just kind of took off even more in skincare.
One of the trends that's kind of associated with that is the clean beauty trend, while it's still there, has kind of shifted a little bit. Folks are looking for products that are a little bit more effective, a little bit more multifunctional. So if there's something that you can take out of your medicine cabinet, replace two items in your medicine cabinet with one item that works with everything else in your makeup stack and your skincare stack, that's a big win in 2025.
I use a product that is like a tinted foundation that's also a sunscreen. And I love that because I don't have to do two things. What kinds of
Uh,
other products are you seeing customers doing that with?
We're seeing skincare take a very hard turn with SPF. So SPF is being added into a lot of different components of skincare, like you mentioned, and consumers are looking for a lot more honesty and transparency in what they're purchasing. They want to make sure that what they're getting is effective, that it does work, that it does work with the multitude of other products that they have in their cosmetic counter. So we're seeing a lot of folks get very, very savvy about very, very particular portions of the niche market in skincare.
Just to kind of get a little bit more of a visual for maybe our listeners out there that aren't as familiar with skincare and the various different markets. So when you say that mass market is kind of, taking over again, are we talking, just to throw out some examples, like less purchases of, La Mer and these very high-end products and more going towards CeraVe and maybe the drugstore type brands?
You hit it, Natalie. That's exactly it. Brands like CeraVe are seeing kind of a resurgence. When you look at the shelves at Target, there's the Ulta section that's there. Plus, there's the section that's just in Target. So there's a little bit of shift off of the Ulta towards what's happening just on those Target shelves. Folks are looking for kind of those base items within their routines. It's going back to some of the brands that may have been overlooked at the time when we were leaning toward prestige. So there's definitely still a market in prestige, but folks are looking to kind of complement some of those higher end items with some more kind of mass market based items.
And I imagine that the education of the consumer kind of leans into that as well. As people learn more about ingredients, maybe they find out like, oh, I can get this product which is very similar to this high-end product and I can get it for a better price. So maybe that consumer savviness also kind of plays a role there.
You hit it, and folks are very keen on those ingredients, and this is an area where AI is starting to help a little bit. When consumers look at the conditions that they have, what they need in a skincare routine, what they need from particular products, and they're looking at both prestige and mass products to see where that combination has the best fit. Beauty consumers, personal care consumers are some of the most savvy in the marketplace. They're the ones that push on issues of sustainability. They've been the ones that have been pushing on clean beauty. They're ultimately the ones that are pushing this effectiveness trend. So beauty consumers, personal care consumers are incredibly savvy.
I love it. Can you talk us through a little bit on how new legislation has impacted formulation or labeling? Obviously, it probably comes from these consumer trends that you're saying. And then I know some things are also impacting legislation. So I'd love to hear about that so that beauty brands can navigate that maybe a little better.
And a number of states are enacting a lot of different legislations to tackle things like impurities and be very honest about the harmful ingredients that have been in skincare products for so long, especially makeup products. Looking at issues of lead and mercury, it's not as pervasive as it once was, but being able to continue to limit that's in your cosmetic products. A lot of this legislation is taking place on the East Coast, West Coast, but there's still some in places where I am, like Minnesota. So when you look at legislation like that, as a brand, you want to make sure that you have that capacity to continue to sell in all 50 states. So even though California, Oregon, Washington may be enacting legislation, you want to make sure that you're covering all your bases in order to be able to sell in all those markets. Not to mention things that are happening in the EU with legislation there and extended producer regulations that are going on. There's a lot happening at once, and a lot of different organizations like the Independent Beauty Association is taking a good look at this. They have a map of the United States where you can click to see what's happening in any given state when it comes to legislation. There's also sites like saferstates.org that show you what's happening state by state and what legislation is on the docket, what has been enacted, and what is coming up.
As you as a manufacturer, how are you navigating that? Are you guys like just staying on board with like all of these different changes and then making sure that that gets integrated into your formulations? Like, how is that working?
Ultimately, a lot of this legislation comes down to the brands, but as a manufacturer, we are very keen on what's happening state by state because it affects the brands that we work with. So we're very much keeping an eye on it along with brands that ultimately have to be the ones to file for registration guidelines and things like that. But we want to make sure that if we create a product, we test that product, and we make this retail ready, that it has some degree of future proofness when brands deliver it in their retail settings. So it doesn't do us any good if we create a product that in 6 months from now can't be sold on shelves in California or New York or Minnesota or Colorado. So we want to make sure that what we're creating has legs for the brands, and we can help brands a little bit when it comes to actually abiding by those requirements that are happening state by state. A lot of the brands that we work with at FP Labs and Federal Package are smaller brands. They're emerging brands. They may not have the large legal entities to help guide them through a regulatory journey. So that's where we fit in and help guide that a little bit. Now, we can't always help them do the things that they need to do on the brand standpoint, but we are there when we are looking at compliance issues, testing issues, those regulatory issues to be a good partner for brands as they develop their products.
Let's shift into some other things that are affecting brands right now, and that is the latest tariff changes and how those changes are influencing sourcing and pricing.
Tariffs have been a huge harbinger over the market, skincare, personal care for the last 6 months. A lot of it is not just the fact that tariffs have been enacted, but a lot of the uncertainty of what's happening with tariffs. So the fact that tariffs may come, tariffs may go, is even more of a weight on skincare and beauty and the brands that operate in those spaces. I think for the first half of the year, we've seen a little bit of tentativeness. Some have just kind of sat on the sidelines to see how this tariff environment will unfold. And that's kind of a tricky space to be in because the longer you wait on the sidelines, the longer it'll take to get into development and then ultimately get a product on the shelf. So the uncertainty is one of the biggest issues with tariffs. Now, just recently, the D minimums that have been kind of a commonplace since the 1930s have been pulled. So even small orders coming from overseas. This was a law that was enacted to make sure that orders underneath $800 were exempt from any tariffs. Now that's recently been pulled. So now smaller orders that you would have seen from overseas are now getting hit with the tariffs and taxation.
As far as the brands that are getting sidelined a little bit, do you notice that it seems like the smaller companies struggle with that the most, would you say? Or do you think it's the same kind of across the board?
It's really interesting across the board. Smaller companies are definitely getting hit with it. They're the ones that take the biggest hit. But when you look at the supply chains that some of the larger brands have, that's a big disruptor at scale at that point. So everybody's feeling it in a lot of different ways. One of the things that we encounter as a manufacturer here is we source products from all over the world. So there are some places where shea butter, jojoba oil, they're only made overseas. We
Right.
can't source them locally. We can't source them domestically. So we have to purchase them overseas. And that's just the reality of cosmetic manufacturing right now.
Even though there's domestic manufacturing happening, it doesn't mean that domestic manufacturers don't need these materials from other places. And so it's, yeah.
And as a example, my family, they have an organic ginger company. So organic ginger or ginger in general doesn't grow very well in North America. It grows the best in China. So like between the tariffs, the shipping containers becoming a lot more expensive, like they've had to really work to navigate this new environment, and then all of their companies that they're working with as well. And that's just one ingredient. And of course, skincare is composed of so many, very high quality ingredients from all over. So that would be very tricky to navigate from all angles, I'm sure.
Right. You hit it on the head. The Better Business Bureau gives some guidance on this now that even though a manufacturer like us at FP Labs in the middle of Minnesota, yeah, things are made here in the USA, but at the same time, we are sourcing globally. So we've advised the brands that we work with, be careful what you put on your label. And we actually recommend that if you want to say made in the USA, that you make sure that you include the information with globally sourced ingredients along with that. So you have utter clarity in your product.
That's a really good recommendation. In the supplement industry, like my clients in the supplement industry, they have been consistently putting like where they're sourcing their ingredients. I think the beauty industry is probably going to have to follow all of that. Can't just be simply made in the US and, there isn't that transparency.
And cosmetic customers, they really want that transparency. They're ones that really lead the market in looking for that transparency.
We had mentioned something about domestic manufacturing earlier. Are you seeing brands shift more towards domestic manufacturing?
We've seen some interest in it. A lot of folks have realized that maybe diversifying their manufacturing outfits is a good thing to do. We have seen some interest come to us because of that. The American market is still a huge market for cosmetics and skincare consumption. So being able to have domestic production and even shorten those supply chains is a good value play for a lot of these brands and these companies. We haven't seen a huge influx of it like I think the legislation was expected to do, but we do see some interest because the American market is so large.
How could somebody go about navigating the manufacturing industry to make sure that they find a partner that's right for them, taking into account the tariffs, taking into account, all the legislative issues and all that kind of stuff? How do they find a partner that's, able to do everything like you do?
Right. Well, thank you for that. I'd recommend that you make sure that your manufacturers are knowledgeable about those regulations, they are knowledgeable about EPR, extended producer regulations that are coming into effect. Make sure that they are knowledgeable and that they give you advice on the testing requirements that are necessary for your cosmetics or OTC products. The reality is that this is not just an industry where production takes place and then as soon as it comes off the line, it goes into retail settings. A lot of testing when it comes to stability is necessary for a lot of products. And if you have a product that's an OTC, and sunscreens are, you need to make sure that these go into testing for a number of months in order to make sure that they're safe. So a third party organization, EWC, just came out with a study a few months ago that said only 1 in 4 sunscreens actually have the degree of effectiveness that they advertise. So you want to make sure that the product that you're buying, the product that you produce, has the right recommended label claims that you are saying when it comes to OTC production and cosmetic production. If consumers find out that your product is not as effective as you claim, that can be really damaging to your brand.
You mentioned clean beauty, which that of course has been a trend for, maybe 10 years or so, where you started seeing a lot more organic products and all these other kinds of products come out. And I myself have kind of had an ebb and flow on that. And I know many consumers have, of like, oh wow, of course it sounds how great that it's organic. You think no pesticides, organic food is good, so organic skincare must be good as well. But then I know that that can also lead to a host of issues, like not having the right preservatives that keep it stable for long periods of time, and various other issues. Is that something that in your manufacturing you're always helping advise on people too? Because I'm sure there's a balance if somebody wants to start a clean beauty brand. They want to use a lot of these very nice natural ingredients, but you also, of course, want to have that really stable product. And I bet that's something that you really have to find a balance on.
For sure. And we have a great team of in-house chemists here at FP Labs that can make those changes for you. If you want organic, if you want clean beauty, we can make those changes. And it's not just a one-for-one swap a lot of times. You need to make sure that the preservative load there is correct, that the other ingredients blend well with your formulation. So consumers in skincare and beauty have really learned over the last couple of years that natural is great, but just because it's synthetic doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. And preservative loads within cosmetics are not necessarily bad. So that's where a lot more education is taking place, and a lot of people are getting a lot more clarity on that and understanding that the formulation is key and sustainability overall is key as well.
I want to go back to what you were just talking about a second ago. You had mentioned that sometimes brands are not actually like what they're claiming is not what actually is. And I just wanted to see if you could talk about that a little bit more. Like, how can consumers know what is happening with their products? Like, how can they double check their products? And then as beauty brands, how can they double check that that's happening with their manufacturer?
Being able to make sure that the brands that you choose don't have FDA warning letters against them helps. Making sure that you're looking at that product with a very keen eye to understand how the SPF is being executed. In the American market, we only have a handful of sunscreen filters, but brands have added other filters that are available on the European market, which actually can increase the availability of the sunscreen. But you want to make sure that if you're using that in certain doses, that you are getting exactly what you purchase, and you want to make sure that if you are choosing an SPF 30 or an SPF 50, that is exactly, it's very close to that 30 and 50 guidelines. So understanding the manufacturing landscape is really good for brands. Working with a reputable manufacturer is always a good place to start, and making sure that you have that clarity to make sure that consumers are getting a great product in the end.
Are there brands now recognizing this importance and they're saying, hey, we know that our product is doing this? Are you starting to see brands doing that where they're, saying like, we've tested it, we know for sure that this is what's being delivered to you?
That is very much the next level that we're looking at right now. So, brands, especially when it comes to SPF, you want to make sure that you are really offering something valuable. Understanding what's happening in those sunscreens is really tricky right now, and I think that you will see a lot more brands tout exactly what sunscreen loads they have in their products, and have more independent testing when it comes to this.
I imagine that it makes it extra tricky for brands here in the US dealing not only with European brands that might have, although like different but relatively similar standards, I imagine, but maybe very different compared to some of the Asian brands. We have, of course, Korean beauty that's very popular here. There are popular Japanese brands now. And you get one of those products and it's all written in the native language. You can buy them on Amazon. How do you know for sure that that SPF is really the 50 number that's written on the label? I bet that's another tricky aspect as these, Asian brands become more and more popular. It's also harder for the consumer to be able to understand exactly what that is, but it adds kind of like a wrench into all this effort that the brands here are putting into making sure their product is totally perfect, only for other brands to come in that, are not necessarily subject to the exact same, regulations potentially.
Right. That's the new frontier for 2025 and 2026. A lot of consumers, up to 25% of consumers now, are getting sunscreens from overseas because the Asian and European markets allow for different and arguably more effective UV filters that our FDA here hasn't authorized yet. So a lot of consumers are making that switch, and they're doing kind of an end around. They've found other filters that work, and they're buying products from Korea that are really innovative, but may not be FDA approved. Consumers are really taking this work into their own hands. So they're trying out new products. Brand loyalty is kind of taking a back seat when folks are looking at trying new products, trying to get to that multifunctional nature of a lot of products. And they're being very careful. They're being very selective and making sure that if they choose a product that they found overseas that they really like, that it works with the rest of the products in their cabinet. So you may have a fantastic product that you got from Korea overseas or European market. You want to make sure that that couples well with all your other cosmetic products. And some of those may be prestige, some of those may be mass. So this is where a lot of consumers are very active in this space, which is a great thing. The next thing is for brands to really adopt that, understand that, and really grow in the space and find new innovative products that really hit at what consumers are looking for.
We experience stuff in the field and, Lauren with packaging and all that kind of stuff. But it's fantastic to hear that as a manufacturer, you're really keeping your eye out for these trends and listening to the consumer and moving that forward. It's so awesome.
We're doing our best, and we have a number of different kind of innovative products. Brands are coming out with a lot of different formats and sizes and applications. We have a fantastic product here at FP Labs. It's a solid stick serum. We also have solid stick sunscreens as well. So that gives you an alternative to the traditional lotions that you may be most accustomed to. And it really fills a niche that consumers are looking for.
There's these various different things like end-to-end manufacturing, building out the formula from scratch versus doing it based off some kind of base product that's maybe already available, sourcing, bottling, all these kinds of things, all these elements. Does somebody need to come with, all of that essentially in mind already by the time they reach you, or do you help guide them through that whole process?
Finding a good partner is always key. At FP Labs and Federal Package, we work with customers, we work with brands to make sure that we're providing essentially what they need. So not every manufacturer has the same capabilities we do. So that's a great opportunity for brands to vet a few manufacturers to find the one that's the best fit for them. The way that we see the market going is a real need for manufacturers to have in-house chemists and to have a good team that can take that formulation and make sure that it works at scale and will be retail ready for you. You want to make sure that when you look for a manufacturer that you're finding that one that has the good fit. Make sure that you're not too small for them. Make sure that you're not too big, that you have that kind of Goldilocks mentality where you look for that manufacturer that has the services that you're looking for and can really be a good partner for you going into the future.
What other consumer behavior are influencing skincare product development right now? Clean beauty and sustainability are still top priorities, but what are the other themes that you see emerging?
Sustainability is key, but effectiveness and the clarity in your ingredient use is very key. So just because you have high degrees of a hero ingredient in your formulation doesn't necessarily mean that it's better. You want to find the right blend in that formulation. So having transparency into your product is kind of the next frontier. A lot of what we've talked about here underscores the need for transparency. That is going to be a big key going into 2026.
I just love the consumer driving all these things. And I love that you, as a manufacturer, are really taking the consumer into account. I feel like that's something in the grand scheme of things that sometimes is not always the case when it comes to producing new products. I mean, of course, everybody wants to, have the consumer buy the product, but really listening to the consumer is, a bit of a different story. And I really love how much emphasis you're putting on that.
Well, thank you. At P Labs, we've taken a lot of time and thought to putting into our own development as a manufacturer. So manufacturing has changed significantly in the last 5 years. It's not just a matter of taking someone's recipe and cranking it out for retail use. It's really being a good partner, helping them do that product development at the early stages and helping them through not only scaling their production and testing their product, but making sure that there's some degree of future proofness that they have so that their product will be able to be on shelves for years to come.
Absolutely. And do you find in this new space where you mentioned people leaning more towards mass market and having attention to the ingredients and products being multifunctional, still niching down towards your particular demographic for products? Because that was something that's been talked about so much. You want to get that one sliver of demographic that wants your product and target just them. Do you find that that's still true, or would you say that being able to target a little bit of broader demographics or maybe larger age groups now, in this environment, is starting to come back as well?
Getting into that niche is definitely something you want to do. There are an incredible amount of products on both the prestige and the mass market shelves. Being able to get to a portion of the market that you are really targeting that has the ingredients that those consumers are looking for is really important to cut through the noise in 2025 and the future. Being able to get to the target market is really key for brands. I can't emphasize that enough. So there's so many different ingredients that kind of come and go with trends and fads, but being able to create products that have a good shelf life for 1 to 5 years is really key for brands to help them with their sustained growth. There have been several instances of brands that were hot in 2023 and 24 that have kind of busted in 2025. So I hate to call out individual brands, but it happens every year. And the reality is, from a brand standpoint, you want to have some degree of consistency so that as a company you can show that that's a growth factor for you, and that your company and your brand are really thinking about that consumer and making sure that you're creating products that people really love and not just fad based.
This has all been like fantastic. Fantastic information. Thank you so much for coming on to our podcast today. Before we wrap up, are there any upcoming trends or challenges that brands should be prepared for? I know we've talked about some of this stuff already, but just curious if there's anything else that we might have missed that would be worth sharing.
From a manufacturing standpoint, we encourage brands when they're in the product development phase to play for the long game. Testing takes time. Product development and scaling takes time. So let's get in the innovation game. Let's create new products because testing does take time when you create a product. And you want to make sure that the products that you're developing now are ready to launch in 2026. So we want to make sure that we're working with brands that are really kind of in that innovation mindset. They're creating products. We'd love to see a lot of these brands kind of jump off the sideline and get ready to create something new. Our in-house staff is ready to help them in a lot of different ways. There's so many different growth opportunities right now. So we'd like to help brands as much as possible, get off the sidelines, get into product development, start something new, kick around some new ideas so that when 2026 comes around, that they've got a product that's ready to hit shelves, that's really there to delight customers in the end.
And what trends are you seeing?
The growing pet cosmetic portion of the market is huge right now. Shows like Super Zoo have really begun to start highlighting that. So pet owners, dog owners in particular, are really getting into the cosmetics for their pet babies, which is a great thing to see. So it's a great thing to see that folks are very involved in taking care of their pets. We've seen the pet market really start describing things as human grade. So one of the other things that we're seeing is we have a great product that's microbiome friendly for deodorant use. It kind of fills that gap between a traditional deodorant that just covers up odor and an antiperspirant that has greater effect to manage sweat. So a deodorant that has microbiome support that kills off lipase or odor producing bacteria that keeps other bacteria safe within your armpit is something that's really begun to resonate with the natural deodorant community.
I love that. I'm like, where's that product? I need it.
It's
I
coming
love the
soon.
innovation. Like, I love to hear this innovation because that's so true. The amount of natural deodorants that I've tried and promptly thrown away because just the efficacy wasn't there, only to go back to a chemical, which I don't love using. You know, that has its own things. It can be a bit itchy, it can be a bit drying, it can have its own issues with that. So I love hearing that there's these new kinds of products gonna hit the market or already maybe hitting the market. That's so exciting from a consumer standpoint, having that innovation right here at home. You know, you don't need to go and scouring the Korean websites or whatever all the time. We have that innovation happening right here as well.
From a manufacturing standpoint, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun developing with the brands, being able to develop a lot of different formats. We've got a crack team here, chemists that have developed a serum in a stick format. So it's something that comes in a very small lip balm tube, and you can use in very targeted areas for hyperpigmentation or very targeted areas that you can just throw into your purse and take with you. So hope that brands really embrace the innovation that manufacturers that have in-house chemists can embrace and really create something fun going into 2026. There's a lot of different components that are coming into what's called the longevity space. It used to be called the anti-aging space. We're kind of going away from that in skincare and cosmetics because it's a little bit of a misnomer. But those of us that are a little bit older are now getting into products that handle the fine lines that are being developed. And there's a number of products that include hero ingredients like heavy doses of vitamin C that are alternatives to things like retinol. Retinol is a product that is fantastic, but it's not necessarily for everyone. It's great in small doses. It's great when you have that capacity and it's not inflaming sensitive skin. You want to make sure that you're very careful with it in the sun if you guys are in a market like Florida. But there's now alternatives to that. So there's a lot of really great ingredients coming out in the longevity space. We want to be very careful with the younger portion of the market. The younger portion of the market is really getting into retinol a little bit early. Being able to take care of your skin at a young age will help you in the long run. And a lot of teens and tweens that are in the market, really the only thing that they need right now is a good moisturizer and plenty of sunscreen. All of us need a lot of sunscreen.
Amen to that. I agree with that so much. Of all the various different, and I love that you call it longevity. I think that's a very cool actually take on anti-aging because a lot of people they don't necessarily feel that you need to be anti-aging, but keeping your skin healthy as long as possible or you know whatever you want to call it is fantastic, keeping that regeneration there.
It doesn't matter if you're in Florida. It doesn't matter if you're in Minnesota. Sunscreen every day is a great element. A lot of sunscreens are found. A lot of sunscreens now have moisturizers in them. A lot of moisturizers now have SPF filters in them. So there's a lot of options out there. Protecting your skin is still number one on the list.
Jeffrey, thank you so much for coming back on to Entrepreneur Mind Speak. We loved having you. We loved hearing everything you had to share with us today. And we look forward to seeing you again, maybe in another year, and hearing more about the updates of what's been going on for 2026.
Fantastic. I appreciate you having me, Lauren. Thank you,
Um,
Natalie. It's been a lot of fun.
yeah, thank you. And this is another episode of Entrepreneur Mind Speak. Thank you. Bye bye.